Well, good evening, folks, and welcome back to another episode of When It Was Real. This show focuses on the glory days of the WWWF in the 1970s, the perfect time to grow up as a professional wrestling fan. Now, I'm just the parking lot attendant, but this other guy, he's the one you bought the ticket for. He's the one and only Nikita Brezhnikov. Nikita, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. And for last week, when you all were saying that ICE got a hold of me, well, they did. But I made a call to the Kremlin, and President Putin said, put him back. He's going to write big check to Trump. So here I am. You couldn't get rid of me.
No, wow, I'm impressed.
Now, you see that guy below there smiling? Everybody's lining up for the one and only five-time WWWF Tag Team Champion co-holder Tony Garea, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. Tony, we thank you, and we're so happy. It's like Christmas morning.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, Nikita. It's a pleasure to be here. I wish a lot of my friends could be here, but unfortunately, they've gone.
Well, we'll bring them up tonight. I got a big shovel. We're going to dig some people up.
Good. All right, so we're going to do a quick commercial, our toast, and then we're going to get going here. So hang on one second. This is Benny Scala, the one and only player. Folks, I am beyond excited to be co-hosting this new show, When It Was Real. And I am just as excited to be announcing our new sponsor, the Free Spirited Company. Free Spirited is a phenomenal old-school clothing company that specializes in short and long-sleeve T-shirts, hoodies, tank tops, graphic tees, heck, even yoga pants. These T-shirts are, to quote Rocky's manager Mickey Goldmill, a wake of art. Yours truly will be rocking the Free Spirited merch on each and every episode of When It Was Real. Not only are these shirts eye-catching, but they are very comfortable as well. Like what you see? Please go to shopfreespirited.com and use our special code MP20 to receive a 20% discount on all purchases. Again, that is shopfreespirited.com, and that code is MP20. As the poet laureate of the Monte The Pharaoh YouTube channel, I will leave you with this. If you like what you see, go buy a tee. Heck, maybe 2 or 3. When your friends tell you, hey, you look like the bomb, send them over to shopfreespirited.com. And here is the merch in the flesh. All right. So, Nikita, what are we going to toast to tonight? You come up with a toast. I know you're going to toast
to Mr. Tony Garea, our buddy. Amen. Known you for about 28 years, Tony. My God.
Well, that's a long.
We're not going to talk about
That's
age.
Longer than I've been alive.
Good man. Thank you. Zdravia. Welcome to the show.
Salute.
Yakshima.
You know, Mr. Peruzovic used to tell me that you were part Croatian.
Yes, that's right. My father was born not too far from, actually, 47 kilometers from where he grew up. But he was evidently born on the island of Far, and I went there, and he was raised in
Split, Croatia.
Yeah.
And for the people that don't know, we're talking about Nikolai Volkov.
Yeah.
So their fellow
what a great guy he was. He was so easygoing. But I still remember him. I'd hit him with an elbow, and he'd turn his shoulder, and I'd hit him right on the shoulder with my elbow. It hurt like hell.
He was like a solid block of granite.
Oh, yeah.
I got to tell a funny story and make a public apology to you. When I met you, January 11th, 1997, it was Shotgun Saturday night. You were an agent, so we're sitting at this table talking with Nikolai. For the people that probably remember that debacle, that was when Nikolai was living in a box in Times Square. They were going to shoot that night. So first time I meet you, we're talking, having a good time. So they call you away, and you go do what business you had to do. So we get up. Nikolai and I were going to go with Todd Pettengill to do the gimmick. So I get my wallet. I start putting money down. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm going to pay for my beer and club sandwich." He said, No, Tony's got it. I said, "Really?" Yeah, Tony got it. I said, "Damn, what a nice guy." So we're on the way home. We're about an hour from home, and I'm like, boy, that Tony's a nice guy. Nikolai starts that laugh. And I'm like, with that squealing, I'm like, what the hell's so funny? He's like, I pulled a double rib. I said, a double rib? What the hell are you talking about? Tony's probably hot right now. I said, oh, you son of a bitch. He didn't pay for it. He said, no, he got stuck. I said, oh, son of a bitch.
It didn't sound like me, to pay for it.
No, it
Didn't
didn't.
sound like me.
I didn't know it then, but okay. Through the years, you know how it goes.
Yeah.
But Tony, we're not going to get into all that. Who's your favorite partner, Mr. Garea? What's your favorite match? We're going to talk because it's based on my book, which you've seen. And we're going to start with when you hit the East Coast, as it was called in 1973. What actually brought you there to work for the McMahons?
Well, actually, I came from New Zealand in 72 and I went to Florida and I came here to make some money. I had no idea how much I was going to make. I actually made the first 7 months was $295 a week. And then I had to pay an apartment there. I had to budget my expenses for travel and eating. And I was still able to save about $40, $50 a week. But I talked to the promoter there, which was Eddie Graham, and mentioned about going to New York at the kind of invitation, you might say, of Tony Marino, or he suggested that I go there. And that was Buffalo. And Eddie said, oh, no, you don't want to go to Buffalo, but let me give Vince McMahon a call. And he called him right there in front of me. And I got booked. So I had my first TV in Philadelphia on September 20th, 1972.
Beautiful.
Tony, did you wrestle Joe Turco for your first match?
Oh, yeah. I know.
Okay.
No, it wasn't the first match, but he might have been the second or third.
Okay.
Yeah. I wrestled Davey O'Hannon for my first match.
Oh, good friend of ours. Great guy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Davey's fantastic. Yeah.
Now, as you started to get popular, naturally, you were just taking the ladies were like, oh my God, and it's like, okay. And the guys, because you were very athletic and you were a high flyer for that time with the drop kick,
Yeah. That was my style. And I kind of, when I was in Florida, Jack Briscoe and we kind of got together a few times and we used to drive to Jacksonville after the Florida television on Thursdays. And Jack kind of became my mentor. And he told me, he said, watch all the matches that you can. And if you see something that you like, incorporate it into your match. And I did that. Of course, I watched all of Jack's matches, with Dory Funk Jr. and Johnny Valentine.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to put all these guys' names down so I remember them. But, Jack was one hell of a wrestler, and what a nice guy he was. He helped me immensely. Actually, if it wasn't for Jack, we wouldn't be having this because I would have gone home.
Wow. Well, thank you, Jack Briscoe.
Yeah.
Now, you were involved actually with one of the first that I can recall write-ins because they were doing a Rookie of the Year contest. Mm-hmm. And really it came down to you and Chuck O'Connor / Executioner number 2 / Big John Studd.
Yeah.
And of course, you overwhelmingly won. So Tony Garea is the Rookie of the Year. They ran a couple of matches with you two, and then you were doing the circuit, Moondog, Maine. Fuji, how many times do you think you wrestled Fuji, Tone?
Oh, buddy. And he helped me one hell of a lot. I remember I wrestled him. It was probably the second match in Madison Square Garden. And we wrestled for 20 minutes. And the doctor walked me out of the arena because I was sweating so much. But I felt good. And he walked me right into the dressing room. And he said, somebody get Tony a beer.
Oh, that's a great doctor, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
where do you? I need a doctor like that. Jeez.
Yeah.
That's
I
great.
was sweating so much. I was just wet through my boots, socks, my trunks, everything.
How was it working with Fuge? Was he
Oh,
nice and
it
easy?
was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I learned so much of him. And then later on with the tag match, him and Tanaka. Mm.
And we'll jump a little ahead, not too much, but when you went out to California, he was the great Fuji, and there you are again.
Yeah. I went to California at Fuji's suggestion. He talked to Roy Shires, and I was in Georgia at the time, and then I drove out there, and I spent a year out there, and Roy tagged me up for a short time with Pat Patterson. Of course, I learned so much from him, and then I was tag team partner with Ray Stevens for a while, who I consider probably one of, if not the greatest heel that was out there.
Amen. And a crazy man that would take a dare. I mean, wow.
Oh, yeah. He was.
Now,
nuts.
I don't want to get too far ahead. We're going to keep you in 73.
Mm-hmm.
Whose idea was it to put you with Haystacks Calhoun? Because, I mean, it wasn't, and I'm speaking as fans, it was like, well, you liked Calhoun. He was bigger in the 60s, no pun intended. He still had plenty of room to run in the 70s, but who came up with the idea to put this youngster with Haystacks Calhoun and put the belts on you?
Yeah, well, I think what happened was that I think Ray Stevens and Nick Bunkwinkle were supposed to come out from the AWA, which was very quiet, from what I understand, in the summertime.
Wow.
And something happened and they canceled out. And then they were stuck. Like Vince Sr., was like, well, what should we do? And then I don't know who come up with it, but they were bringing Haystacks in for the summer. And as you said, he was more popular in the 60s, but in the 70s, he still had a little pull. So Vince Sr. brought Haystacks in, he brought the midgets in, and the girls in also for the summer holidays to draw the kids. So I guess he thought, well, maybe I'll put the Rookie of the Year with Haystacks. And I believe that's what got me over, because Fuji and Tanaka, they didn't want Haystacks in there for too long because they couldn't do a lot with him. So he would start the match, he'd shine for a little while, then he'd give it to me. They would shine me, and then they'd cut me off. As a matter of fact, in Madison Square Garden, we either wrestled 27 or 33 minutes, and I was in the ring all but about 3 or 4 minutes of the whole match, which I didn't mind. I mean,
Right.
I was young. I was like 25, I think.
Right. Now, what you just brought up, though, it's another future show, the curse of the Worldwide Wrestling Federation Tag Team Championship, because even then, when you had the belts, you got it from Tanaka and Fuji, in the match at the Garden, Calhoun gives Tanaka a big splash after the match, and then he decides to give him a topper, and he cracked 3 of his ribs. It's like, son of a bitch, here we go. Didn't put him completely out, but then they got the belts back from you September 11th. And then I'm going to go into something that this peaked, I'm going to say, your popularity. But Benny, go ahead. You got a question.
Well, first of all, we have, thank you, Lawrence Laza Johnson, all the way from Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. He said, a shout out to my fellow, is it Anzac, Tony Garea. Said, Lawrence, thank you for that. No, what I was going to ask Tony is, when we interviewed Jimmy Valiant on my podcast, and he said that when he first came to New York, that Vince Sr. told him pretty much to the day, because Jimmy wanted to turn heel. He said, "You're going to turn heel on this day." You know, Billy Graham, he told him, "You're going to win the title on this date. You're going to lose it on this date." Did he map out a plan for you as well?
No, nothing. I talked to Vince Senior one time, you know, and I said, Vince, how long am I going to be here? And he said, Tony, don't worry about a thing. As long as I'm around, you know, you'll have a job. So it was like he used to call it home. This is your home, you know. So
Beautiful.
I just let it go at that. You know, I never pushed for anything. I just done my job. And if something was out of whack, you know, I spoke up about it, you know, between the boys. Or like if we had a match and I wasn't happy with it, or something was out of line, I just told them, you know, I was all about having a match and a good match, because I was taught in the beginning, make your opponent look good as you can, because then if you beat him, you've beat somebody, and if he beats you, then he deserved it. And then a lot of times, you know, when I got beat, you know, I used to convince the guys in the dressing room. One time in Boston, I can't remember who I worked with, but I came in and the boys came over and said, Tony, you okay? I said, yeah, I'm fine. But they were convinced that I was hurt, which
Beautiful.
means I done the job.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Yeah.
I always said they ought to give the Academy Awards from every year to you guys, because the things that have been done, it's like, forget about it. You couldn't make people believe like you made us believe. Now, that was a nice start with Calhoun. Then in comes Dean Ho.
Yeah.
And when you two got together, oh man, that was Tony Garea took 20 steps in popularity. You and Dean Ho.
Yeah, yeah, Dean Ho was perfect, and that was Fuji's suggestion too, because they were both from Hawaii, and they knew each other. But Dean was the anti kung fu, jujitsu, whatever. So he was a good backup for me. Again, I was the beating boy, you know, because when I made the tag, you know, people knew that holy hell was going to hit the ring.
Well, when you beat Tanaka and Fuji, and it was November the 16th of 73, it was the first time you and Calhoun had the first belts change, him in Hamburg, and this was Hamburg again. It wasn't a riot, it was exuberance. People stormed the ring in Hamburg. They didn't do anything, you know, nobody got hurt, but they were so happy. Because even Fuji he just got a hold of the wizard and like, let's get the hell out of here quick. But nobody cared about them. They just were so happy. They're patting you and Dean Ho on the back, because they took the belts into the dressing room because they're waiting for the belts to come back to the ring. And then it was like, yeehaw, you know, wow. When you took and held those belts up, people were just, the fans, we were thrilled to death.
Yes, it was a whole procedure about winning. You know, it had to mean something, and you had to show the people that, you know, you were happy to win the belts, which we were, but there was more of a draw if, like the heels, because they wanted to see us beat them for the belts back then. And even though, you know, the return matches, which we worked all around New England, they still drew very, very well.
Sure. I got something we're going to segue into in a minute when we get into 1977. But with that, you know, you and Dean Ho, you're just tearing the territory up. People are happy. Bruno becomes champion again. So everybody, 73 ends on a high note. 74 starts off. It's beautiful. Then here comes Jimmy and Johnny Valiant. And
Yeah.
it's like, that's who you turn the belts over to. That was the last time they changed belts in Hamburg. And I just watched it on YouTube the other day when you inducted the Valiant brothers into the Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot all about that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because somebody said it was Davy Boy Smith and some other. I'm like, no, it was Tony Garea. And it's like,
Yeah.
there it. And who better? Because you guys worked how many times, you know?
Oh, God knows how many times. It was a piece of cake to work with them too. And then I watched a show from Hamburg, and I must have been in the ring 90% of the time, and they made me look like a giant killer.
Mm.
I said, oh my God. I didn't
God
even
love.
remember that till I seen it, and I said, Jesus. I wasn't
So
that good.
Well, the Valiants, you know, Jimmy spoke so highly of you, Johnny. I really got close with Johnny through the years. In fact, Nikolai and I introduced him to a guy that got him a job in New York City as a painter. He was on tough times, painting for
Yeah.
St. John's School. So Johnny was always grateful. And anytime your name came up, he said, man, it was always just, a nice walk down the highway. We did our job, made people happy. Because he said Chief used to call him Dinky. And he said, Dinky, they can say it, but they can't feel it. He's up. And it's like, okay, that's Chief.
Yeah. He had a nickname for everybody.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he called me Anthony.
Anthony was your
Yes.
name. Yep. And he would call Howard Finkel the Pharaoh, called me the encyclopedia. And Nikolai, he called Mr. Peruzovich, because I'd get him once in a while because I could imitate Chief good over the phone. I'd say, hey, Mr. Peruzovich. He said, hey, Uncle Chief, how you doing? I said, I got you bastard. He said, oh, no, I know it was you. I said, go to hell. You don't know who it was.
Yeah.
Because, when they put him in the Hall of Fame, Chief said, hold it. He put us on a three-way call. He said, you ought to induct him. Put that damn gimmick on. I'm like, I'm for it, Chief. But he said, Nikolai, you call the office tomorrow. But he didn't do it. And Chief said, he's like a broom. They use him to sweep, then they put him in the closet. He ain't going to do it. And he was right, because Nikolai, he was happy. He wasn't going to make waves.
Yeah.
He just came, did his job, and off to the races he went.
Yeah, that was the Croatian in him.
Well, people like to say he was cheap. And you can call me cheap. But you know what? At the end of the day, you got a house to live in. You got money in the bank. Why the hell do you want to make somebody else rich? It's crazy.
Yeah, I know.
Nutty stuff. So,
I
Tone,
wanted to make a comment as a pure fan.
No, you can't make no comments, Benny. Go ahead.
in the 70s, but when I'm hearing you, both of you talk about, the tag teams and the changing of the titles, and it brought me back to that time when, early 70s, mid 70s. As a fan, I was glued to the TV set for these tag team matches. They meant everything to me. And, sadly, I have a list of things that no longer really are important in professional wrestling that used to be everything. One of them is, no more managers, really, no more 2 out of 3 fall matches, no more draws. But the one that bugs me the most is the lack of emphasis on tag team wrestling when it was so important back then.
Yes. A lot of people have brought that to my attention too. And I don't know why. I don't know why they don't have, it's a whole different segment. It's something else to draw people in. To watch them. It's they're very entertaining if they done right, and of course the whole thing is, to see you tag your partner and your partner make that big comeback.
Well, and they were 2 out of 3 in your day, Tone, right?
Yeah, a lot of them were.
You were close to a 30-minute match with a tag match.
Oh, yeah. I remember one time in Sacramento, Pat and I worked against Fuji and Mr. Saito, and we went an hour and 15 minutes.
Wow.
And I thought, well, it's a tag. But the next day I felt it. God damn, did I feel it. And I was
How about
wrestling every
Saito?
day.
Was he stiff?
Hmm?
Was Saito stiff?
No, he was good. I didn't really find anybody stiff. Guys used to complain about them, being stiff. I know one time, not by design, but we just did it, Moondog, Maine.
Oh,
And I wrestled in Madison Square Garden, and we beat the living bejesus out of each other for whatever reason, I don't know. But a few months later, I said, Lonnie, I said, how'd you feel after that match in the Garden? He says, oh, Jesus, I hurt for about 3 months.
Wow.
we loved that gimmick, though, with the goldfish and chewing the glass. He was a wild man.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
And then you team him up with Crazy Lou Albano. That was gold.
Oh, yeah. Lou was a good-hearted guy, though. God. He liked me, thank goodness,
Well,
Otherwise, he would have beat the living crap out of me every chance he had, but he didn't.
now, after you go to California, you come back in 1977 to the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, and somebody had the brilliant idea of putting you and Larry Zbyszko together, and it was just like one shoe and the other shoe. It was a perfect fit.
Yeah, Larry. Actually, when Larry came to New York, he didn't have a place to stay, so I had him stay with me for a while, and then we found him a place, and so we got on pretty good together. We, drove to the towns together, and it was funny. We're in Madison Square Garden, and Gorilla Monsoon, who was an agent, he said, oh, Larry, I got something to tell you. Yeah, what is it? Are you finishing up on Tuesday? Which was TV. And then, or Wednesday. Maybe it was Wednesday because it was Hamburg. And then Tuesday came, and it must have been Wednesday. And then we went to Hamburg Wednesday, and Monsoon come here. He says, Larry, Tony, come here. He said, we're switching the belts tonight. So Larry had all this anxiety about, finishing up and not having a job, and to becoming champion.
I know what happened, Tom. Danucci and Dino Bravo were supposed to get the belts back.
Oh, yeah.
That was when you first hit Allentown, actually. So the night before at the Garden, Dominic's wrestling Crusher Blackwell, and he cracked he bruised or cracked a couple of his ribs, because then Dominic started wearing that singlet. So it's like, here's the tag team curse again. So there you go, Tony Garea and Larry Zbyszko, perfect. They've reunited them, put him in there, and that was. There's another place. When you went from the Philadelphia arena to Allentown, what a difference, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, in the beginning, it was Philadelphia arena to Hamburg, and then it was Allentown to Hamburg when they stopped filming in the Philadelphia arena.
Yeah, because a couple of those the last shows there, it was like, man, this is too sparse. You try to bring people closer, but it's not looking good on television. Benny, go ahead. What do you got?
Yeah, I was going to say that, Larry Zbyszko supplied me with my biggest, what I call holy shit moment in 1980 when he turned on Bruno. Even though at that time I was 25 years old and I was kind of wise to the ways of the wrestling world, but it still absolutely shocked me. Never expected it. But I was going to ask you, the number of wrestlers who never who wrestled as a babyface their entire career is very small. Was there ever any talk of turning you heel? Because I would imagine that the reaction, if you had ever turned heel, would have been as intense as when Larry did.
Yeah, no. There was a couple of times I wrestled Lanny Poffo one time, and I wrestled Bob Backlund, and I thought, oh, maybe I could be heel against there. Well, Lanny had a bad neck, so I was protecting him. And Bob wanted to do what he wanted to do, so I didn't even bring it up to Bob, but we just had a scientific wrestling match, and there was a position I was in, we were in, and I gave the little counter office, you might say, so he knew what I was about to do, to make him look good. And we did it, and he thanked me after that, in the dressing room for making him look good. But that's what I was taught to do.
Right. Now, this brings to the point I was getting at earlier. All this stuff spins together after a while, like a wrestling match.
Mm-hmm.
When Superstar became champion, you weren't tag team champion at the time. You and Larry were together a lot. But you, Chief, Larry, all the faces were starting to get their shot at a title now, because you're not going to do it with Bruno, obviously. I remember you always talk about a date, and it's July the 9th of 77. You were heading to the Spectrum.
Yeah.
And go ahead, tell the story, Tone.
Yeah, so I'm heading to the Spectrum, and I'm going down the Jersey Turnpike, and it's a beautiful day. And I said, there's not going to be anybody there tonight, because they'll all, from Philadelphia, they'll all be at the beach, Atlantic City or Wildwood. Anyway, we got there, and they had the most people they ever had in the Spectrum. I think it was 19,500, but I'm not sure about that. And Billy and I, we wrestled, and I thought we had one heck of a match. Well, every time we wrestled, I thought our match was good for some reason or other. But somebody came up to me and they said, boy, I watched you and Superstar wrestle in the Philadelphia Spectrum. He said, you really had it in for each other that night, right? That, that we just wrestled,
Yes.
It was real.
That's when it was real.
Yeah.
But now, see, a lot of people, and you can probably answer this because you were in the area right at that time. A lot of people want to say Bob Backlund wasn't over. They think they know what that means. Now, Superstar was drawing, but people didn't come to the Spectrum that night to see him beat Tony Garea. They came to see Tony Garea beat Superstar. They wanted him to lose that belt. That's what the crowds were all about. Chief, when he was there, because a lot of times Larry was still kind of young, you'd be in his corner. And then that would lead to Graham would attack you afterwards, and the next month you got a match. And it's like, it's not that Superstar, and I loved it. It was my favorite time of the 70s for that reason, to see all of you guys, our favorites, get title matches. But we wanted to see Superstar beat. But he was a cool heel. It was kind of tough to hate him, but nevertheless, we wanted you to win.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's what it was about. But Vince Sr. had it in his mind. He was going to be champion for so long, and that was it. We couldn't understand it because we thought, he was drawing money. Boston, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, all those big towns, New York, Madison Square Garden.
Well, they did a great thing, too, in Baltimore. They brought Bobo Brazil in. He wasn't in the area, but they brought him in for a one night, and, place was packed. And then the next year, you and Bobo got together against the Lumberjacks.
Yeah, I don't remember that day.
And it was like, it was just a one-time thing, but it filled the house. People were thrilled to see him, and put him with you. It was just like magic. It was great. But what did you think about Backlund's run as champion? Did you think he had it?
Yeah, he was a good wrestler, and a lot of people accepted him for who he was. Clean cut guy. Not necessarily a gimmick, but a natural type gimmick. And he could back it up too. I seen him put some guy said to him, I think in Worcester, I think he said, "Oh, you're not so big. I think I could beat you." And Bob said, "Well, come on." And he put him in a headlock. And I said, "Bob, what the hell are you doing?" I said to myself. And the guy passed out. Pound for pound, Bob must have been the strongest man on earth. Oh, he was, he'd done repetition after repetition, whether it was push-ups, Hindu squats. He used to do the Harvard step test, He did that, I think, in Hamburg for the whole television taping.
Right. And the wheel one time.
The wheel. He'd go, everything he'd do, he'd try to double what anybody else did.
Well, you actually were teaming with him for a while in '77 when he first came in.
Yeah, I think we had a couple of matches together. I think that, Vince Sr. just wanted him to rub shoulders with some of the local baby faces.
The favorites. Yeah, get that shine on him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Put him in there with Tony Garea and Larry and Chief, Chief. Because now I heard at one point they were thinking about giving you the belt.
I heard that too. And then I heard the reason they didn't was because I had tattoos. And now everybody's got tattoos.
Oh my God, you ain't kidding. Jeez. Yeah. It's like a birthmark compared to what they walk in comic books.
Oh my God, yeah. Basically nothing.
Well, look, Undertaker had nothing when he came in, and he got a sleeve now. Randy Orton, he's got a sleeve.
It's an accepted thing now.
Yeah.
Go, Benny.
Yeah. So Tony, the Intercontinental title came into being in '79. By then, you're already well established as a tag team specialist. Was there ever any talk of giving you the IC belt? I think if the IC title had come into origination, say in '74, '75, you would have been a multi-time champion.
No, I didn't hear any talk of it. I think just about everybody else got it. I think Pat Patterson brought it in first.
Yes.
First one, yes.
Yeah,
he actually started as North American champion,
yeah.
And they wanted that to be forgotten. That was DiBiase brought it in, and then when he beat DiBiase, they let that disappear, and they created that
Intercontinental Rio, right, Nikita?
Yeah.
What's that?
Was it
was
title
in
change in Rio?
Rio de Janeiro. Yeah.
Well,
blame it on Rio.
Yeah, Pat, because they said it was September the 1st, even though they announced it on the August 27th show that he was the new Intercontinental champion. And Howard Finkel didn't make many mistakes, so it's like something strange here. But anyway, they kind of flew in with that. But when you returned, it was July the 8th of 1980, and they did it perfectly. It was right at the heat of Larry. He and Bruno had pretty much had a lot of matches, but they were getting ready to build Shea Stadium. And you're sitting in the audience.
Yeah.
And Bruno was doing the color. He says, "I see Tony Garea." And Vince says, No, I don't think so, Bruno. I don't think so. And then afterwards, Joe McHugh introduces you, and then you had the ringside interview. Tone, take it away.
I can't remember the actual interview, but I remember getting up on the apron, and then Larry, I think he hit me. Yeah. Punched me or some damn thing,
Yeah. They set it up for a couple of weeks, and then that last time, because you told Bruno, You said, Bruno, tonight, break every damn bone in his body, because they were showing that the afternoon of the Shea Stadium. They changed time for that. Yeah, that was great. Everybody remembers that line when you talk about it.
I forgot all about it till you mentioned it. Yeah.
I'm glad I put a smile on your face, though, because it means a lot to us crazy wrestling fans. We loved it.
Oh, yeah.
But then Tony Garea and Larry Zbyszko started having a series. It wasn't a lot of places. You hit the Garden 2 times, and I tell you, the first one, it was when Backlund wrestled Harley Race, and we knew there was not going to be any double title switch or anything like that. But I think you and Larry got the biggest pop that night going against each other. It was like magic.
Well, thank you. I don't remember too much about that. I probably had my head totally in the match, and then you don't hear anything else,
It was well done. They brought you back the next month too, but it was like it had to be. It had to be Tony against Larry at some point.
Yeah, I think that was Larry's idea, to bring me in and work with him. I remember we worked in Rochester, New York. I remember that, and a few other places. But he was cool to work with.
Oh, sure.
No complaints.
Very good. Then Tony Garea's popularity just blows the chart away. Rick Martel enters the territory. And
that was a good time in my wrestling career with Rick, because Rick had a brother that had passed away a few years earlier, and he was about the same age as me. So I think, I kind of became his adopted big brother, and we would wrestle, and we didn't have to even talk to each other. We knew what we were going to do next, and how things were going to play out. But in Philadelphia, it was the first time we wrestled the Wild Samoans, and they had a reputation, of, being a little bit stiff. Whether they were or not, I don't know, because they weren't with us. So Gorilla Monsoon was the agent, and he said, you guys are working with each other, and blah, blah, blah. There's a room, go and talk about it. So we walked in there, and nobody was saying anything. So I was there before. I'd been there the longest, right? So I said to the Samoans, I said, brothers, there's an easy way and a hard way to do this. And I don't know about you guys, but I'd sure like to do it the easy way. And I gave them a little speech and a little theory on my the way the match should go. And they nodded their head. They said, yes, brother, yes, brother. And we went out there and we did it that way. And it turned out to be fantastic. And then we worked all around with them, I don't know, for almost a year, I think. And we never had any problems. And we came back in the dressing room. I think they hurt us more in the dressing room than they did in the ring, giving us hugs. Because, you go to a wrestling convention, you get more hugs there than you do in a gay parade.
Now, I got to tell you about that night, though. Because you were supposed to wrestle Slaughter, and Rick was going to wrestle Sika. But they saw the magic. They just said, these two, we can't wait another day. Because you wrestled in Boston that afternoon. Then they just said, do this. But it was such a great finish. It was a double pin. And nobody, because they had it was Prism Network. It was
that's right. Yeah.
And Dick Graham and Cal Rudman said, we don't know we don't know who got it. Both people were pinned. So Dick Worley standing there with the belts. And they were waiting and waiting. Then they made the announcement. It was like, oh, here we go again. Another wild, just let loose. And I think you and Rick Martel were the most popular tag team champions ever.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think that's because we had similar styles, and we went in there to create a match. We weren't about ourselves. We were about developing a match, telling a story.
Didn't hurt that both of you were good looking and the ladies were going crazy, believe me.
Mhm.
So that helped get you over pretty good.
Thank you.
So then here come the Goofy Moondogs, who in the beginning, I thought they were going to trip over their own 2 feet, but then they started to gel. And then you got clobbered with that bone, and then it was like, okay. Now they got the belt, and it was a good move. I think Pat may have been calling some of the shots at that time, and it was smart.
Yeah.
And that's why they brought in Fuji and Saito, because Pat knew how well you worked in California. And then it's like, boom, you guys get the belts back July 21st, and then Garea and Martel on top again. People are happy.
Yeah, that was a great time. I tell you something with the Moondogs. The first time we worked with them was a Sunday night in Torrington, Connecticut, and we couldn't do a damn thing with them, right? And they both around 300 pound. I think Sailor White was well over 300. Rick was about 235, 230, and I was about 245. And I talked to them after the match like I was the school teacher. I said, things have got to change for tomorrow night. Otherwise, forget about it. So I gave them my philosophy on how the match should go, and went to Madison Square Garden the next night, and it was like night and day.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
now,
Rick,
there's some tattoos.
Rick still believes that.
Sailor White had some tattoos, huh?
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, he's gone, and so is Randy, I think.
Yeah, whatever happened? They said he couldn't get back into the United States.
Yeah, he couldn't get back into the States. He went home, I think, New Brunswick, Canada, and then he couldn't get back.
Yeah, they weren't the same. When they put Spot in there, it was like, it's okay. But he was no small guy. He was about 265, but it's like, he's not King. It's just not the same.
Yeah.
Because King Vince used to say his big splash equals Haystacks Calhoun by far, without a doubt. Plus he could get higher, right?
Yeah.
So that was wild.
Yeah, he was good. He was a funny guy. He liked to put back a few beers too.
I can imagine. Now, after that, they put you with Eddie Gilbert. Rick kind of left the area and things were starting to change, not completely, but then that's when they put you with Eddie Gilbert. But I don't know. You guys look good, but I don't think they had real plans to have you go too far with it. That's when Murdoch and Adonis were champions.
Yeah. And I think that Murdoch and Adonis, and then they brought Jack and Jerry Briscoe in, and they worked around with them, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
But I think with Eddie, he wasn't too steady. I didn't know him that well, but I know I think he passed out and drove into the back of a truck one night. I'm not sure.
I heard about the accident, but I didn't know how.
Yeah. I think that was it, but I'm not sure.
Now, Tone, one thing that I don't even understand. How did you guys get paid? Was it at the TV tapings? And then how did you know where the hell to be? Who gave you the schedules? No,
we got paid for TV at the TV tapings. We got paid for the small show at the small shows, right? The big shows, we had to wait for a check. And then they gave us the check, I believe, at the TV tapings. like Madison Square Garden, it was like if we had TV after that, there's a good chance we didn't get a check. We'd have to wait for another 3 weeks for it. So, sometimes we waited about a month. And then later on, with the big shows, it was maybe a 3-month wait.
It's pretty much what they do in the movies, brother.
Yeah.
It takes you a while to get paid. But hey, the smaller shows now, it was nice to be able to get up close in like the high schools to see a wrestling match, see you and people like Chief. And it's like, but what were the paydays like? Were they, I don't want figures, but I mean, how much off were they from what you'd get at the Garden?
Yeah. They were off quite a bit, like at the Garden. Like I was thinking the other day, there was a kid there was selling postcard-sized pictures of me, and I heard he sold 600 at the Garden for $1 a piece.
Wow.
And my payday at the Garden was $250.
Wow.
That was 1972.
Jeez.
And yeah. So, of course, we didn't have any pictures. We didn't have there was another story in Bangor, Maine. That's 375 miles from where I lived. So after the show, I had to drive back 375 miles. Of course, there'd be 4 of us in the car. And one night up there, they sold 160 pictures of me for like, I think $10 a piece.
Damn.
Yeah. So, and I walked out of there with $100. And I didn't get anything, but that's the way it was,
Right. Jeez. Now today they're getting $30,000 to sit down and do that.
Oh yeah.
Now, you talk about 375 miles. How many cars would you go through in the course of a year or a couple of years?
No, I kept my cars in good shape. Yeah, I done the wheel alignment every month. I changed the oil every 3,000 miles. I had a tune-up every 12,000 miles. And I did the tune-ups myself in the end. Because I had a mechanic, and what he did with mine, I had a 72 LTD Braun. And I bought that off Manuel Soto. And it only had about 30,000 miles on. By the time I finished with it, it had 260,000. But I had a mechanic, and he, excuse me, he advanced the timing on it, and he told me to run premium gas in it, which at that time was about 46 cents a gallon. Because now, like at one point, you'd be just wrestling for gas money.
Yeah.
But that's all gone now, because we flew everywhere.
Benny, what do you got?
Being a former bean counter, I always wondered about the money. So you said you got paid at the house shows, you got paid on TV, but like the Garden shows, the larger arenas, what you said, it might have been a month later. Did you have an idea? Because I'm wondering how are you able to budget your money? Did you have a good idea how much you were going to be paid for those Garden shows?
Well, it varied. It just depended on the expense that they had. But generally, I think the boys got like 30% of the gross paid out to them. And then the main event, I think they split 10%. And then the rest was budgeted out. then they had agents that had to be paid. Referees had to be paid. So there wasn't a lot. Like if it was a $9,000 house, there was $3,000 for payouts. And if the main event got 900, then you had 2,200 or 21. Yeah, 2,100.
How far in advance would they book? Where you're going to be this month, next month? How far in advance?
We used to get our bookings at TV, so it'd be about every 3 weeks. Yeah. About every 3 weeks so we know where we were for the next 3 weeks.
And nobody, if you had a problem and didn't make it, nobody wanted an excuse, right? It was bad news.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think I missed, I had a pinched nerve in my neck in about 1979, and I drove up again to Bangor from Portland, and I said to the guys, "You got to take me to the airport. I can't take this anymore." I didn't know it was a pinched nerve. I thought it was a pulled muscle. So I missed that show. And then we had a double shot, and I was so bloody hungry, I had to stop and eat. And I was on last in Washington, and we had a show in New Jersey. And we got there just as the show finished.
Wow.
So I missed those two.
No, there's a good question.
And that was about it. Yeah.
Today, how do you feel from all of the years in the ring? How does it affect your body? And I feel pretty good, actually, to tell you the truth. And I go to the gym every morning, and I don't do any heavy weights. I just do what's comfortable. Like if I feel like pushing it a little bit today, I'll push it. If I don't feel like pushing it, I don't. But I go through the exercise, whether it's shoulders or curls or triceps, push downs. And then I do my cardio. I do 8 minutes of cardio in the beginning, and after the workout, do maybe 20 or 30 minutes, depend how I feel. Just go on how I feel. Staying active helps a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Amen to that. Hey, Nikita, how much money would have Tony had made if they had merch back in the day when he and Rick Martel were tag champs? How many shirts could they have sold?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I don't think I ever had a shirt.
Really?
They couldn't have made those fast enough back then.
Yeah, you got to give Vinny Jr. credit. He understood what was coming and what to do. He had the brain. He's like, okay, the old man knew wrestling, but I know business. And people badmouth him, but he knew.
Yeah, well, he surrounded himself with a lot of people that that knew the merchandising business type thing. I think at one time I heard, I think the number was 12 million a week in merchandise worldwide.
Unbelievable.
But I can believe that when you think worldwide, you break it down. It's and then we were second to Gold's Gym, I think. Gold's Gym T-shirt way back, was very popular. And then Disney, of course, Mickey Mouse.
Because Chief said he personally handed Iron Sheik a check for $100,000 for his doll, and it's like, holy shit. He got $100,000. What the hell did Vince make then? Jeez.
Yeah, and I think the boys got like 5% of whatever they sold. So that must have been about a $2 million sale.
$2 million, 5%, $100,000.
Easily. So, Tone, when you went to become an agent, Vinny surrounded himself with you, George Steele, Chief, Killer, Kowal, a lot of good guys that he could trust.
Yeah, yeah, and the chief too. The chief was a big help to me. I used to watch him when I first come up here because he was the top baby face, and I said, "What the hell is he doing?" He was doing virtually nothing that I could see. And then I got it. It took me months to get it, though. And then I think he suggested to Vince that I become an agent, and it was a little bit. I say, do I want to do this or do I not want to do this? And then I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. What's the worst? If I don't like it, I just say, okay, that's it, I quit. But Randy Savage said to me one time, he said, Tony, I don't know if you got everything under control or you just don't give a shit. Because, what's the worry about something going wrong? If it goes wrong, then you fix it. And we had things like one time in St. Louis, it was, I think, July 1st. And Hogan and Mr. Perfect were on top. And Hogan couldn't get in on his plane because of the snowstorm. So we kept up to the third match, then we were sure he wasn't getting in. And then we said, you can get your money back if you want by the end of the next match, which I think was the third match. And then we're going to have an 18-man over the top rope battle royal. But we kind of blamed the St. Louis airport for not letting Hogan land. And then we had the 18-man battle royal. And Dusty and Kurt they were the last two in there, and they stayed in for about 8 minutes. And then Kurt took a bump over the top. And Dusty won, and everybody was happy. And we only returned about 600 tickets.
Wow, beautiful.
There was probably 17,000 people there.
Go ahead, Ben. You got a question.
Yeah, Tony, I wanted to know why it looks like you got out right around age 39 or 40 when you were still in great shape. Well, how come you quit, at a relatively young age? Did you just have enough at that point? Or
no, I thought I'd had enough, and they were bringing guys in with 22-inch biceps, and they thought they knew the business, and I was protecting myself half the time. Like, for example, Ted Arcidi, I wrestled him in Toronto in front of 65,000 people. He could bench press 600 pound plus. And, I said, I got to work with him. Am I going to get out of this in one piece, or am I going to be crippled? Like
by
every
accident,
match could be your last match.
Yeah.
You don't know. Look at poor old Drozdov, is it?
Darren
Drozdov,
yeah. And that was an accident, and he was working with D'Lo, and D'Lo's a polished worker. It just, shit happens.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, well, the writing's on the wall. So really nowhere else to go. So
but you're here today, you feel good,
yeah.
and you could sleep at night without pain, and that's important.
Yeah. A lot of people ask me, like, Tony, when did you get your hips done? I said, I didn't. I said, what about your knees? I said, I didn't. Yeah? How about your shoulders? No, nothing. Everything's mine.
Beautiful.
I think Davey O'Hannon got back from the AMA, didn't he, Nikita?
There you go. Benny knows.
We joke around with Davey O'Hannon's had so many surgeries that we joke around with him that, like, the AMA is going to give him an award for keeping them in business.
Yeah.
He's going to join us one of these weeks coming up after his knee healed. He had another replacement, so it's like, yeah, and unbelievable. Well, you know who else? Nikolai never really got a bad injury.
No, maybe
He was
it's the Croatian blood.
There you go. But then again, with that big bastard, you know, he usually was dishing it out. Who could hurt him? Because Chief used to say, I tell him, when I go like this, move in. When I go like that, move back. He said, he got it mixed up. I said, stand still. I'll work around you. He said, he's like a cement mixer. He'll hurt you by accident.
Yeah.
And Chief always had that. You could have that match in an iron lung. It's like, we never figured out what the hell he meant.
Yeah. I remember that iron lung.
That is wild. All right, we're not going to abuse you, Tone. We had you on over an hour.
Oh, good. Well, I hope this works out good for you. It's been a pleasure talking to you, you know.
Oh, it's been an honor
my memory.
for sure.
Benny, what does it look like? People, because I can't see the remarks. Benny can see them.
Oh, everybody loves Tony. Yeah,
Good.
I mean, one of those people that, you know, there's very few people. Wrestling's such a polarizing business, and you hear bad things about almost every wrestler. I've never heard a bad word about Tony Garea ever.
Oh, well, that's good to know. I kept them a secret.
You worked them good, Tone. Beautiful.
We'll keep the kayfabe here.
Okay.
All right. Well, say hi to Mercy. God bless you both. And just keep on going, brother.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Bye-bye, Tony.
I got to figure.
God bless.
Bye. Bye, Benny.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Likewise.
And all you got to do is click leave studio and you're out of here.
Oh, I have to put my glasses on to read
the
that.
red X. Otherwise,
red
your
X?
camera will be on and people
like
will be
Baron
following.
Von Raschke, red X, right?
That's it.
Or was it Ron Bass? Did he have a red X too? That was a little bit later though. But Baron
I don't see a red X.
Maybe we'll just cut you off when we do it, right, Ben?
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, I want to give thanks to everyone who joined us tonight for When It Was Real.
Oh, there's the red X.
There he is.
It was hiding. That's it.
Technology is a great thing, even though I don't know much about it. But you know, we promised to, you know, Nikita, really, honestly, you know, sometimes the lament, you know, I'll be 70 years old in 27 more days. But you know, if I wasn't that old, you know, I would have missed the greatest period in the history of wrestling, and I wouldn't have been able to watch greats like Tony in his prime.
Yeah,
I mean, what was better than that?
That was fun. I enjoyed it.
Oh, he was so good. He was so good. Just a great guy. You know, when you told me that we were going to have Tony, you know, I anticipated what he was going to be like, and he exceeded all expectations. Just a nice, humble man. Has some great stories. I don't know is there a book about Tony out there? I don't think there is.
I don't think so. Not yet.
He needs a good writer. Maybe I'll volunteer for that. He really, I mean, you talk about a guy that, you know, epic career, and you know, you know, one thing I was going to say, he got out early, but he got out on top. You know, I remember watching Willie Mays in the 1973 World Series for the Mets, and you know, stumbling in the outfield on a routine fly ball, and sometimes, you know, I mean, look at Ric Flair. Sometimes these legends, they overstay and they tarnish their legacy. And Tony didn't do that. Tony left when he was still on top, still in great shape. He probably could have wrestled another 8 or 9 more years, easy, no?
Yeah, well, yeah. But like he said, you know, things were changing, and you had the bulky guys coming in, and they didn't know how to work the way.
Yeah, if it was still 77, 78, and he was 39, then he could have wrestled, but not in 86, 87. It was a whole different world back then.
You got to know how to take care of each other. That's the big thing. Look good,
right?
Like Chief said, they can see
I don't
it, but
think
they
Ted
can't feel
Arcidi
it.
was worried about taking care of anybody except for Ted Arcidi. Just a guess, you know.
Too muscle.
And I think J.A. Will in the chat room said he actually benched 705 pounds. That's insane.
It was some kind of wild record. Yeah, he was a very strong man.
You know, another great episode. We always say that there's a treasure trove of great interviews on the Monte The Pharaoh YouTube channel. But you know what, Nikita? We just added one to it.
Amen. My favorite.
So, this is you got to check the channel out, and we'll be back next week to take you on another awesome trip on the Wrestling Wayback Machine. This is going to be hard to duplicate, Nikita, but we're going to try. So for the great Nikita Brezhnikov, and for our wonderful guest, Tony Garea, this is Benny Scala, the one and only player, also the Poet Laureate of the Monte The Pharaoh channel, leaving you with this. I hope you enjoyed our very special guest. In our opinion, he's one of the best. Tony Garea, he's a pretty big deal. Come back next week for When It Was Real.
Beautiful.
Night,
Das Vidania.